Hello and welcome to the Listener's Nest. Today we're sharing a story that might be slightly different from what you might expect on the occasion of International Women's Day. We are not talking about a modern day woman leader, although there are many such wonderful personalities that we can talk about and celebrate. Instead, we are going back to the 17th century and celebrating a king. Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj. Now, you might wonder, what does a king like Shivaji have to do with Women's Day? We have all heard the stories, seen the movies, and maybe even sung songs about his bravery. Everywhere we look, Shivaji is shown as this fearless warrior, bold, unstoppable, a man of great strength and careful planning. He is praised for winning many battles, defeating powerful enemies, and taking over new lands with his courage and intelligence. He is seen as the perfect example of strength, a king who ruled with power and force. But is that all there is to this great man? Is that his only story? Is the Shivaji that we know and popularly hear about the complete version? Was he just a brave warrior and nothing else? Or was there something more to him that hardly anybody ever talks about? That is what we're here to find out. Think about it, dear listeners. We are never just a single story, are we? We are layers and layers of interrelated, interwoven stories, bringing out the version based on the need at the time. So why should Shivaji Maharaj be any different? Of course, he was all those things that people admire him for. A fearless fighter, a brilliant conqueror, and one of the greatest symbols of the so-called masculine. The go-getter, the unstoppable, the all-powerful. But that is not his complete character. It cannot be. His legacy is not just about winning wars. It is about justice, fairness, and the kind of leadership that matters even today. And that is why we're talking about him. A famous writer once asked, why do we still admire a king in a democratic world? That's a good question. After all, kings belong to history. So why is Shivaji still important today? One of the main reasons is that he didn't just receive a powerful empire directly from his father. He built one himself, meaning that the huge kingdom that he ruled over was not given to him ready-made. He had to build it himself, fighting and winning several battles. Also, when he started as king, the conditions were not great at all. The land was in complete chaos. The farmers were struggling, the zamindars or the landlords were cruel and merciless, and other kings and rulers did not care at all about the welfare of the people. But Shivaji was different. He tried his best to put an end to his people's struggles. He didn't just build an army and fight wars. He won people's trust. He created a kingdom where people felt safe and respected. And his people, the loyalty they showed him was unbelievable, unimaginable. Ordinary men and women made extraordinary sacrifices for him, including sacrificing their own lives to save Shivaji's, because they believed in him, in his work. Here, the story of Shiva, a barber, is very famous. It is said that when Shivaji was caught and trapped by the enemies, Shiva disguised himself as Shivaji, meaning that he pretended to be Shivaji and allowed him to escape, knowing full well that it would cost him his life. But he did it to save his leader. Then there is the story of the brave Baji Prabhu. Shivaji was once trying to escape the enemy, and the enemies were close behind. Baji Prabhu and his soldiers stood on a narrow mountain path, ready to fight to the death. They distracted the enemies and blocked their path so that Shivaji could get to safety. They all died in the end. Baji Prabhu and all his soldiers. But they saved their king. And what about the story of the famous Madri and Hiroji, who fooled and tricked the guards when Shivaji was in jail? Again, helping him escape and continue his great work. They knew they would be caught, but they stayed behind anyway. One of them dressed as Shivaji, lying on the bunk bed of the prison cell, and the other one massaging his foot, as he would do to serve the king. Why all these sacrifices? Why were so many people so willing and ready to lay down their lives for a king? Was it only to impress him because he was brave? Nope. They did this because Shivaji cared about them. He talked to them, listened to them, and protected them. Most kings didn't bother with common people, but Shivaji did. He made sure that the landlords didn't cheat the farmers. He made sure that the army didn't loot them. He helped the farmers when their crops failed, giving them seeds and tools and minimizing their taxes. He made them feel like he was one of them. And now let's talk about women. And this is mainly why we are talking about him today. In those times, as we know, women, especially poor women, were often mistreated. Many powerful men believed that they could do as they wanted, treat women the way they wished. But Shivaji was not like any of them. He put an end to such behavior in his kingdom. One day, a patil, that is a village officer, harmed a young girl, violated her. She felt so ashamed and dishonored that she took her own life. The villagers too were extremely upset about this, but no one could say a word against this officer. When Shivaji heard about it, he was furious. He had the officer arrested and punished so severely that no one in the village dared repeat such a crime. Another time, one of his own generals attacked a woman named Savitribai Desai, who had bravely protected and defended the fort that she was in charge of. When Shivaji found out, he punished the general by blinding him, setting an example for everyone with the message that no one, not even his top officers, was above the law. He declared that a woman's dignity must be protected at any cost, and he made sure that this rule was followed. And then what about the famous story of a beautiful Muslim woman who was captured from the enemy and brought to Shivaji as a gift? Instead of accepting her, do you know what he said? He said, "If only my mother was so beautiful." This is the kind of respect that he treated her with. He sent her back home with her honor and dignity intact, setting an example for all his kingdom. He ordered his soldiers never to harm women, no matter their caste or religion. He stopped them from taking women as slaves and punished those who disobeyed this law. His army was special too. He gave people positions in the army based on merit and ability, not religion or caste. His soldiers were also farmers. They knew what it was like to be a farmer and to work the land, and so they respected other people's property. They remembered their own families when they saw other women. They did not steal or hurt people. Other armies looted and stole from the farmers, destroyed their crops, and mistreated the women wherever they went, but not Shivaji's soldiers. They were in fact instructed to protect people from such mistreatment. He paid his soldiers well, so that they wouldn't need to steal or loot from the common people. Dear listeners, did you know all these things about Shivaji? Do you now see why we are talking about him today? Because Shivaji's story is not just about his bravery, the fierce battles he fought, or the brutal, ruthless ways in which he defeated his enemies, which is all that we see, read, and hear about him. That is not his complete story. His story is about leadership built on justice, compassion, fairness, and trust. Many rulers have tried to control people through fear, but fear never lasts. Power, dear listeners, can never be taken or grabbed. It is earned, given by the people out of trust and faith in what the leader stands for and represents. Shivaji earned his power not just as a brave warrior, but as a fair and caring ruler who understood that true power is not earned merely by winning battles, but by winning the hearts and faith of their people. On this Women's Day, therefore, we remember Shivaji not just as a brave and courageous warrior, always depicted with this sword in his hand, ready to rip apart and strike down the enemy. Because that, in our view, is a very narrow and limited understanding of this great man. And it does not completely and accurately reflect the full depth of his wisdom, his unwavering sense of justice, and his exceptional leadership. And that is why, centuries later, we still remember Shivaji today as a leader whose legacy of justice, dignity, and protection continues to inspire us in our efforts to build a world where respect and compassion are the foundations of power. Do let us know what you think. Thanks for listening and have a great week ahead.